Welcome back to my channel. My name is Setson. Today we're going to build a weather service application. So this is going to give us a weather report of any given city of our choice. This is a beginner project. I'm using PHP as the main language. By the way, this is a command line application, so we have to run it in the terminal. This is the demo of the application. So I'm going to open the built-in terminal in Visual Studio Code. We say PHP weather.php, and then we specify the city that we want to look up. This will give us the weather report of that city. So let's say Beijing here. If I run this, you can see we have Beijing and the temperature, the weather description, and then the humidity. Let's do a second one, .php, and then let's say London, for instance. Run this. Okay, so it gives us the current weather. Okay, so let me take you through the setting up of our environment. We're going to need PHP and Composer. The easiest way to install PHP and Composer is using the Laravel documentation. By the way, we're not going to use Laravel because Laravel is a PHP framework. We're not going to be using any frameworks here. Search for Laravel documentation. This link will show up right here. Click on that link. It will take you to this documentation. You want to go to the installation, and then you want to go to the section where it says creating a Laravel application. This is one of the ways of installing PHP and Composer, but there are many other ways you could use. But I found this one to be quite easy because it's just a one command installation. Okay, so if you're on macOS, you can copy this line right here. If you're on Windows, you have to use Windows PowerShell, and you have to copy this line right here. And if you're on Linux, you have to use this line right here. So let me show you how you can do it on Windows because I'm using Windows. I'm going to search for PowerShell. This is your Windows PowerShell. You can then go ahead and open that. You can see right here, I'm in my PowerShell terminal. The way you know that you are in PowerShell, there's a prefix PS right here. And here it tells us that this is Windows PowerShell. For some reason, if you have CMD open, the command prompt does not default to PowerShell. So you have to run the command PowerShell. And if you run that command, then it will take you to PowerShell. Okay, so with your Windows terminal open, you can just copy this command, copy up here, and then open my terminal. I'm going to paste it right here. Paste anyway. It's going to paste that. This is just a comment, so it's not going to run. I have already done this, so I'm not going to run through the installation. If the installation is successful, you can run PHP version. And you're supposed to see a version of PHP right here. At the time of making this video, we have PHP 8.40. You could also check for Composer, run Composer version. You should see a version of Composer. At the time of making this video, the version is 2.8.12. This command right here also shows us our PHP version. We have successfully installed PHP and Composer, and we are good. Now we can create PHP project. The next thing, we need an external API, which is going to give us the weather report. And so the best that I found, let's do a search in the browser. Search for weather API. I want to visit weatherapi.com, this link right here. So we need to sign up. They're actually generous. If you go to their pricing, you see they have a free tier right here. Okay, so let's go to our sign up. And so make sure you sign up for an account. And then after you finish, I've already done this. After you finish, then you have access to this API key right here. This is the one that we're going to be using to make API calls to this endpoint. Okay, so obviously we're going to look at their documentation for us to know how we're supposed to make API calls. So just make sure you have an account here, and then we'll come back later and then try and access the weather report. We have all the necessary requirements to create our project. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into the D drive. I'm going to look for projects. I have a dedicated folder for PHP projects. It's PHP project right here. So inside here, new folder, we can call it weather_service. But you can name it whatever you want. So with that done, then double click to open the folder. And then now I can open this in the terminal. You can right click and then open in terminal, or you can go into this address bar, click into that address bar, and then write PowerShell. I'm sure it's going to open in PowerShell. And of course, we can see the path for our D drive projects, PHP project, and then weather service. So we are in that folder. So you want to be in that folder. Okay, so we're going to initialize a PHP project. So for us to initialize a PHP project, we can run Composer init. So it means initialize a project. Init is short for initialize. So let me go ahead. You can see it says welcome to Composer config generator. This command will guide you through creating your composer.json and config. So the first question, package name. This is the format of the package name. It has vendor and the name. This is the default value. So for me, I'm okay with the default value. So I can just hit enter. And then we can provide the description. By default, it's empty. You can see here. So I'm going to say weather service application in the terminal. I'm going to hit enter. And then author. You can see the default values provided here. Press N to skip. So I'm going to press N. I'm sure it's just no, and I'll skip. And then stability, I'm going to leave it blank. So I'll just hit enter. Package type, I'll just hit enter. And then the license, I'll hit enter. Define your dependencies. Would you like to define your dependencies interactively? The default answer is yes. Yes, we need dependencies for our application. I'll hit enter. And then we want to search for the package. The package that we're going to use, which is going to be our HTTP client, is called Guzzlehttp client. This is a PHP package that you can use. I'm sure it's similar to Axios. If I hit enter, it's supposed to give me a number of options. The one that we want is number 0. They are numbered right here. Enter package number to add or complete the package name if it is not listed. So enter 0 right here. Enter the version constraint to require or leave blank to use the latest version. So I want the latest version, so I'm going to leave blank. Hit enter. At the time of making this video, you can see the latest version 7.10. Search for a package. Now we no longer need any other package, so I'm just going to hit enter. Would you like to define your dev dependencies? We don't have any dev dependencies. The answer is going to be no. Hit enter. Add PSR auto load mapping. Leave it blank and hit enter. Do you confirm generation? I'll leave it like that and then I'll hit enter. Would you like to install dependencies now? You just hit enter. It's going to go through the installation of our dependencies. Okay, so it looks like it's done. The instruction at the end right here. 2 instructions. One is for PSR for auto loading. And then also in our entry file, we need to require this right here. So I'm going to go ahead and open this in a text editor. So you can use any text editor of your choice. I'm going to do this in Visual Studio Code. So I'll write code space dot like this, and then I'll hit enter. And so this is going to open our project in Visual Studio Code. I'll make this a little bit larger so that you can see. These are the files that have been created by running Composer in it. It creates a source directory, which is just empty. It also creates a vendor directory. This is similar to Node modules if you're using Node.js. So it contains the dependencies. And then we have our composer.json, provide the metadata of our project. And then we have composer lock, which locks the dependencies. This one is similar to package lock.json, and this one is similar to package.json. So the first thing, we're going to create our weather service. For us to create our weather service, we have to go into our source directory. So I'm going to create a file right here. I'm going to call it weather service.php. Of course, this is a PHP application. By the way, I'm going to stick to the convention. They are what we call PSR, which is PHP standards recommendations. So you go to phpfig.org. Let me go to the home page. So it's PHP Fig. This will give us the PHP standards recommendations. So the one that we want is for basic coding. So we want this basic coding standard. So I'm going to click on this. If you go to the basic coding standard, you see the standards that we have to follow. Files must use only the opening tag. We must use UTF-8. Class names must be declared in Studley capes. This is a variation of camel casing. You capitalize the first word and every other word that follows. Our class names must be similar to our file names. All right, so with the knowledge of these PHP basic coding standards, we can then go ahead and create our weather service application. So I'm going to go back to our project. Inside our weather service.php file, so it's PHP, and we don't need any closing tag. And go ahead and create a class, which is going to be the same as the file name. So it's going to be weather service like that. This is how you create classes in PHP. Just keyword class and then the name of the class. Inside here, we can create our constructor. It's going to be a public function. And then double underscore construct. Not constructor, it's construct. And then, of course, this is a function. The way this constructor works, it runs automatically each time you create an instance of the weather service. Inside here, we're going to create some variables. So I'm going to initialize them inside these brackets right here. So I'll create space. We have 2 variables that I need to initialize here. The first one is going to be a private variable. It's a string. PHP variables begin with a $sign. So this one is going to be a API key. but you can name it whatever you want. This is going to hold our API key value. And then the second one, again, is going to be a private string. This one is going to be our endpoint. So I'll call it endpoint. It's going to be a string value. These are instance variables right here. So you can pass them inside this construct as arguments. We also need another variable for our HTTP client. So I'm going to say private up here, but this one is going to be a class variable. So client, this client is the type of the data. We're going to call it client lowercase c right here. And it automatically imports this from Guzzlehttp. It was automatically imported. I have an extension, it's called PHP Intelligence, this one right here. So make sure you have that, PHP Intelligence. Go ahead and install that. Then it will give you all these suggestions that I'm getting here. We can go ahead and assign a value to this variable right here. So the way we do that is we use this client referring to this client right here. Then we can assign a variable. So the way we create a new client, I'm going to consult with the documentation, Guzzle PHP like that. And then of course you guys documentation, and then we go to quick start and you can see. So we instantiate the client by using the new keyword. That's what we're going to do. In here we can say new capital letter client. Of course it's coming from this client right here. I'm going to pass in an array. If we go to our endpoint, weather API, if I go to my dashboard and then you go to your API documentation, please complete weather API documentation. So click on that link, the introduction, of course, and down here, getting started. You see that the endpoint that we're going to use is HTTP, not HTTPS. You need to verify SSL certificates. And so this is going to fail. So for you to avoid the verification of SSL certificates, you need to say verify. Value is going to be false. Then we can go ahead and create a function to get our weather service. So it's going to be a public function. By the way, these words public, private, these are access modifiers. Public means you can access it from outside the class. This is going to be get weather, but you can name it whatever you want. It's going to take in a string argument, take the city as an argument. It's going to return an array. This naming convention, I'm getting it from the basic coding standard right here. It says method names must be declared in camel case. We can go to the Guzzle documentation and see how we can then access an endpoint. So to make a request, we could use requests. Another way is to use magic methods. So I want to use the request method. This is exactly what I want. It takes in 3 arguments. So right here, this client. So I'm going to use request. It takes in 3 arguments. The first one is the request method. So in this case, it's going to be a get in all uppercase. And then it takes in the URI, which is the endpoint. In this case, is this endpoint. And the last argument is an options array that we need to pass. I'm going to pass in that array option. Right. If we have some kind of a query that we want to use, we put it inside the array options. Let's look at our weather service API. Go to the documentation introduction, and then you go to getting started. You should see our base URL is this one. Right? If we want to get the current weather like we're trying to do, we need to access current.json or current.xml. In our case, we want JSON. We need to append this to the base URL. Let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to literally copy this endpoint, Control C to copy that, paste it here on the endpoint, Control V. So we now have our endpoint current JSON. So I'm going to copy that, Control C, paste it in front of this. So there has to be a / current JSON like this. There are 2 required request parameters. These are key and queue. The way it works, query parameters, we have a question mark. Key, we have this parameter as key. It has to have this name right here. The key will be our API key, API underscore key. There'll be an and queue equals CT. This is how it's going to work, but we don't append it manually like this. We have to pass them inside this options array. I'm going to pass this. We have to provide the key in quotation marks. It's going to be a query. As per documentation, you can see here, you have to provide here single quotes or double quotes, doesn't matter, but it's query, and then you provide the value. The values are going to be an array as well. So do it like that. It's going to be an array of values. Put a semicolon here. I'll put these on a separate line. So key, $ API key. The second one here, the value of that queue is going to be our city. the argument we passed in our function. This thing right here will return a response. I'm going to assign this to a variable called response. This response here, we can play around with this response, but let's try and find out what is it that we can get from this response. So we need to visit our documentation. So if you go to your documentation, go to using responses, and you can see how we can use our response. We can get the status code, we can get reason phrase, we can get the body of the response. From that body, we can get the contents of that. That's what we want. We want the contents of that body. So we can go ahead down here, dollar response, get body of that response, get contents of that response, like this. However, we need to decode this data right here. We're getting JSON, but we need to decode that JSON. We can use JSON underscore decode, and then we pass this thing right here inside this. So this is going to decode our response that we get. So it takes in the JSON string being decoded. So this is our JSON string being decoded. And also here we can pass in a boolean. When true, returned objects will be converted into associative arrays. We want this to be converted into an associative array. So true right here. Okay, we can assign this to a variable result. We can var dump underscore dump. We just want to see what is in this result right here. Of course, here we are returning an array. We can then return down here so that we do away with this error right here. So we can just return an empty array for now. So let's check out what is inside this result. Let me save this. After we have done this, we need an entry point to our application, of course. This is just a weather service. Our entry point is going to be a file inside our main project. So we're going to create a file. We can name it whatever we want, but I'm going to call it index.php. This is going to be our entry file. So now I can go back to the terminal and use these directives right here. We forgot to provide a namespace. Let's do that. Actually, this is an important lesson. If we create a service like this, for this to be accessible outside of this class, we need to provide what we call a namespace. We already have it right here for PSR auto loading. We use this namespace. So let me copy this line, and then we're going to paste it up here. So for any file that is inside our source directory, you should use this namespace. So now we can access this file here inside our index.php. In our index.php, we can create our PHP and of course provide this directive. It says include the composer autoloader. We want to include the composer autoloader. Copy this. We need this command right here. So we can create a variable called weather new weather service. Yeah, we don't need those parentheses. $weather get weather, and then we pass in the city. So let's say Beijing for now, because this function right here takes in the city as an argument, as you can see. Let me assign this to a variable called res. Okay, so var dump res right here. After we're done with this, then we can check this in the terminal. The way we run this, of course, we have to call this index PHP. So it's going to be PHP index.php. Run this. Of course, there's something here I forgot, because we forgot to pass in the API key. We need that API key to access that weather service inside my account. So you can go to your account, up here, my account. We want to copy this API key, but this should be private. You should not allow anyone to get access to this key. But because this is a tutorial, I will delete this key after I finish recording this tutorial. So it's no big deal. And also you should not expose them in your code like this. I'm just going to paste it right here. It doesn't matter. So after we're done with this, now we can go back and then try that again. We're getting some data right here. You can see we're getting array 0 here, which is a result of this res. Because our method or function is returning an empty array, we also have a var dump with a result. So that result is the one that is giving us this array here with 2 values. It has location and current. We can then get that information from this result. I'm going to remove this. I can create an associative array of the values that I want from that returned data. In quotes, city is going to be a result. If you look at the data that we got location. So it's going to be location. Inside that location, there's name, temperature, result, current, Let me check out the output that we got. Current, inside current, there are 33 values. One of those is temp C. Temp underscore C. Description is result. The description is right here. So it's under current, then condition and text. Current condition text. So here, current condition text. I want the humidity. So it's going to be result. It's under current, then humidity. Current humidity. We are now returning this array right here. Since we are returning this, if we go to our index.php, you can see now if we dump that result, let's check it out. Let me clear this. Let me run that again. Run that again. You can see we're getting only these values right here. The city, the temperature we have, the description we have, the humidity we have. So we are good. Instead of dumping this, we can then echo in quotation marks city, use this curly bracket $res capital letter city /n to create a new line. So let me save this, run this and see. So we're getting Beijing. So we can now echo all of those values quotation marks. We are getting all these values from this array that we're returning. So we're accessing these values right here. Run that and you can see we're getting that. We want to be able to pass the city via the terminal. So the way we do that, up here we can create, you can say city argument vector. You can access command line arguments using this variable here, $argv. So the argv is available globally. It gives us access to the command line argument. So we want the value on position 1. Let me pass in the city right here. Instead of hard coding Beijing city, we'll get this from the command line. So let me save this and then clear this. So when I say PHP index.php, like this argv, we have the name of the file is position 0, and then whatever I provide here is going to be argument vector 1. So London, hit enter. You can see now I'm getting the city London, temperature 12. However, if we do not pass in any city now, let's say for some reason we don't pass in any city now, of course we're going to run into an error. For us to avoid that, we can run an if statement. We can say if the number of arguments in our terminal is less than 2, because it has to be 2 or more. If it's less than 2, then we don't want to run this. We can echo a message usage. We instruct the user on how they can use this application. PHP index.php city name, and then we exit with status 1. Okay, with this done, we can save and try with no arguments. Hit enter. You can see now it says usage PHP index PHP and then city name. We can provide the city name Luanda. Hit enter. You can see the temperature in Luanda, which is the capital city of Angola. We can also say Abuja, which is Nigeria. Run that. You can see right here. Okay, so we have our weather service done. If you do have any questions, you can leave them in the comment section. If you do like the content, you can leave a like, leave a comment, and you can also consider subscribing to my channel. I hope to see you in my next tutorial. For now, I'm out. Cheers.